Hey, thank you for tuning into Wagz Film Radio. I am back on. Sorry about last week. We were not able to be on the air, but we did have a rerun show playing. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Today we're going to talk about something it's a quote that's kind of been said to me a couple of times in many different settings. But I do have my wife on the air with me.
Hello.
I know you all like to hear her voice probably better than mine. And I like to have her in the room with me better than any other guests I've had.
Aw, you're so sweet.
Brownie points. Anyways, so the quote that I've been hearing lately is this thing that says, and we actually were at church today, and we heard the pastor say it, and I've had a couple of buddies of mine say it at some of the Bible studies I've had, and so I felt the need to maybe expand on it. And the quote is, and I don't know the actual original person where it came from, says, "What you idolize, you will also demonize." And looking at that, I was like, okay, well, let's break down. You know me, I like to break things down, look at the deeper meaning of each word that we're dealing with. So what does the word idolize really mean, and what does demonize really mean? Idolize means to admire or love greatly or excessively, which it's also known as idolatry. To idolatry, which is extreme admiration, love, or reverence for something or someone. And demonize means to portray as wicked and threatening. So the things that you admire, love, whether it's something or someone or something that you love greatly or excessively, not just love lightly, but excessively love, you will eventually portray it as wicked and threatening. How can you relate that?
Well, I will say that the way that Pastor JD said it this morning was, honestly, it put so many things into perspective for me. He was talking about how, we were all, when Adam and Eve fell and we were separated from the Lord, there was created this void. And we all know about that. But it made so much sense when he was saying that anything other than God would make it where your soul needs to breathe. And I love, it was the best analogy I've ever heard of anyone saying, because when you're drowning, he said this morning, he was like, when you're drowning, you don't drown from holding your breath. You drown because eventually your body breathes on its own and it breathes in the water, and that's what kills you. It suffocates you. Well, when our soul can't just hold its breath. We need to breathe something else in. And so it made so much sense for him to say that, because he said, if you're not breathing in the Lord and the glory of the Lord and the things that God has for you through him, then you're breathing in other things. And that's why the Bible is so clear on not, idolizing other things other than the Lord, because when you do, this is where it comes in. When you idolize something else, eventually you will demonize it. And what that means is everything's going to fail you. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, I've been in a place in our marriage where I've idolized you. And then when you do what any human does and you mess up and you don't meet my expectations for perfection, all of a sudden you're the worst thing ever. I mean, we've been in that place in our marriage.
And we have. I was actually going to ask that. Do you really think you can idolize a loved one, whether it's a parent or if it's a spouse?
I used to do it to my parents. I think a lot of kids do it to their parents. I used to do it to my parents.
We do, and I think naturally as children we grow up and we do naturally idolize our parents. We look at them as being perfect. And what really screws us up as Christians, is understanding what true love is and the love of God. And what they say in the Bible about loving God and God's love for us is a heavenly Father's love. And the problem is, here on earth, is the only thing that we have to understand what a fatherly love is from the relationship we had with our own fathers. What if we had a lack of relationship, or there was a broken relationship there? And then the sins of our fathers then all of a sudden gets passed down to us, and we view that as the love of God. So then it makes God appear impure and not right to us, because we have this conflicting view of what true love is and the love of a father.
Because you weren't taught any different.
Exactly.
That's only what you were taught. You were taught that it's just like, and I'll say this too, and this may be going a little bit too far, but there are parents and there are spouses that want to be idolized. There are spouses that go out there and they act like they are perfect. And when they mess up, they don't repent. There are parents that when they mess up, they don't repent. And they actually create an idol situation on themselves. Now, when I got saved, even to this day, you and I have talked about it. It's so weird when we're a kid and even a teenager, we look at our parents like they're these perfect people. And then I think that's one of the reasons there's so much turmoil in relationships when kids become teenagers and young adults, because all of a sudden, these parents that could do no wrong, you're getting a mind on you're getting your own mind, and all of a sudden it's getting where, you see a little bit of wrong. You see that they didn't do things right, but yet this whole time you idolize them. Exactly. And so I think it's important for parents and spouses to make sure that they are constantly, if they have that tendency to push their kids or their spouses to idolize them, I think it's important for them to always continuously put the Lord in that place.
Exactly.
And if they don't, JD said it perfectly, your kid's soul, that void's going to be filled by something.
And most of the time, we end up trying to fill those things with worldly things.
I don't even think it's that we try. It just happens.
Well, naturally,
if we're not it's natural because it's like a vacuum. It sucks in everything around you.
We do try, because as soon as one of them, we do fill that void in our lives, in our hearts. If it's not filled with with God, we end up, that fails on us, so we quickly grab something else, and it's never really a full fulfillment that we were looking for. But what is idol? What does the Bible say about idolatry, and what is it? Most people think idolatry, they just think of, worshiping another god or something like that. But Colossians 3:5 says, "Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you." So we're talking about what's internally, what you're thinking, what you're feeling. And those things are sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, covetousness, which is adultery. Idolatry. I'm sorry.
We got to get you in a reading class. Just kidding.
I do that every week. Anyways, so these are the things that these things is what creates idolatry in our lives. Being sexual immortality. Immorality. I'm sorry. I am horrible today. That, doing those things, you will start to crave those things, and that's where your mind will be instead of on God on a daily basis. And that's where you're taking all of your energy, all your focus, and you begin to worship that. Going back to what the meaning of idolatry is: extreme admiration, love, or reverence for something or someone. To admire, love greatly, or excessively. You begin to admire those sexual things that you've been doing that is not godly.
But I think that that's innate in us.
It is.
We are sinful people. That's our hearts are pure and simple. They are wicked. We are wicked people. It talks about it all the time in the Bible that we are. They talked about it in church this morning. As a person, we are, impure, and we are selfish, and we are always looking to do what's not right. And there are people that don't do a lot of bad things, but I've even been guilty of saying, I don't, I'm not sexually immoral, and I don't, worship anything. I don't watch a lot of TV, and I pat myself on my back. But guess what? My heart is still selfish. I still look at the things I do. I'm like, what? I'm not going to do these things so I can look like a better Christian. And that alone, I need to not do those things because that's what the Lord wants me to do. But a lot of time I do find myself saying, that's just me. I don't know if it's you, but there are times that I do things that I'm like, well, I'm going to do this because it'll make me look good. It'll make me look like a better Christian. Yeah. But innately, in me and myself, I am sinful. And that's where the love of Christ comes in. That's where the gift came in.
Once we start walking in that light of Christ, it's not about what we can do for Christ, but allowing Christ to do things through us. Mm-hmm. It's not about what we can do. And I think we've talked about it before in the past where, wanting to do things for Christ, we end up going before Christ, leaving Christ behind, and we're sitting here fighting all these things in our lives.
Well, it's because we were being selfish. And
exactly.
We thought, you know what? Okay, we're going to do this stuff in the name of Christ. And then we go before Him, and we do it out of our fleshly desire of our timing, because we think, okay, it'll fit perfect from this month to this month that we'll do this stuff. Mm-hmm. And really, it's just not the case. We've had so many issues where we think, okay, this is great. We pray for God to bless it instead of praying, God, is this what we're supposed to do?
Yeah, and
we idolize those things. That's what this is, coming back to. We idolize, like I said, I've idolized you on so many occasions, and I've not even meant to. It's just, I'll look at you because I love you a lot. I mean, that's the truth. But I love you a lot, and I'll look at you.
You look at me with like this glowingness around me.
I know, you got a little halo.
Yeah.
And I say it to you all the time. I say it to you all the time that I don't think you're human. But, there have been situations in our marriage where you'll fall, and I can't emotionally handle it. And it's wrong. It's wrong. It's a sinful part of me. It's something that, I do want to love you, and I do want to admire you. I think the Lord has a special blessing there for husbands and wives that, love and admire each other, but there's a line that's crossed. And that line's crossed with you and I a lot of the time, because I just look at you and I just think that you're awesome. But then when you mess up, you fall from that pedestal that I put you on. And it's something my parents used to talk to me about when I was a kid. I mean, I was the type of kid that it was either black or it was white, period. I either loved you or hated you. I either thought my mom was the best thing ever and she could do no wrong, but as soon as she did something wrong or something that I really didn't like, all of a sudden she was terrible. And my mom would talk to me about it a lot. You've got to stop putting me on a pedestal. Now, before we were Christians, she would talk to me about that, and I didn't understand because I needed something to be on a pedestal. I needed something that I could look at as a constant in my life. And my mom and dad were human, just like every parent, just like every spouse. We're all human. And I would look at that and just say, she would tell me, that was like a famous word for her, you got to stop putting me on a pedestal. You got to stop it. It was hard for her to live up to. It was heartbreaking when she saw how heartbroken I was when she would mess up. And she only messed up because she was human. And I understand that now more than ever, now that I'm a parent. And there are things that I do, and I'm just like, that's the one thing I try not to do, is I try not to make it where my children idolize me. When I mess up, and it might be wrong, I'll find out in 15 years when our daughter's 20 and telling us, but I try to make it where, I apologize. If I mess up, I do. I apologize to her, and I tell her, I am sorry. Maybe that's not right. I don't know.
I think we do need to show that, we are all a work in progress, even to our own children.
But it's important for us to show that we can only get better through Christ. And I think, that's what we have to constantly be working on, not just for ourselves, but when we're, for ourselves, if we don't have kids or a spouse, and, for ourselves always, but, our children look at us and see that.
Yeah, you're right. And we were, you were talking before, like we constantly want to go back to that simple nature, and us as Christians and where we should be, Galatians 4:8 says, formerly, when you did not know God, you were enslaved to those things by nature. And in Titus 3:3 it says, at one time, we too were foolish, disobedient, deceiving, and enslaved by all kinds of passions and pleasures. We lived in malice and envy, being hated and hating one another. If it is not godly coming out of us, what are we doing? What we are supposed to, and I've said this before, we are supposed to be that example of what Christ is like to the world. But if we are hating and we're doing the exact same things that was supposed to be our past, but we still seem to be enslaved to those other things, are we truly fully relying on God and laying our lives and saying, God, I want you to have me?
But I will tell you that scripture says at one time we were too foolish. We were these things. But it says we were because when you accept that gift, that you can do nothing else for. You can't, your works, it doesn't matter about your works, it doesn't matter about anything. And I loved that JD this morning was just saying, at one time we were. Because when we accepted that gift, when we accepted that renewing of our spirit, that renewing of everything we were, God is the one that can restore those things. And he can't do that until we accept that gift. But when we accept that gift, it's not saying that automatically all of a sudden we're not foolish anymore and we're not disobedient and deceived or enslaved by all kinds of passions or pleasures. We don't live in malice anymore, but it says that we have the power to overcome those things through the power of Christ. Exactly. And that is the only way that and I know I sound preachy right now, but it meant so much to me this morning because I remember being that way. I remember, and honestly, I have to die to my flesh every day to still not be that way. But that's the power that I have through Christ. That's that little bit of power, not little bit, it's all the power of God that was given to us through Christ, that we're able to die to ourselves daily.
Exactly.
And every time, you know what, on a daily, I still do that, but then I'll mess up one time, and I'm like, God, please forgive me. My sinful nature is always trying to peek its little head out. It's always trying to do that. Your turn. Sorry, I gotta take a breath.
No, I agree 100%. And, it's only through God that we can become this new creature, to be born again. We hear about it. We all say, as Christians, we've been born again, this and that. But what does that truly mean? And are we really, truly living a born again life? Are we really a renewed person?
Are we tapping into that power that God gave us?
Exactly.
To be able to renew our mind.
The same God who created Adam and Eve perfect before we went and screwed things up, the same God who created everything perfect and in harmony, is the same Spirit that is inside of you that can remold you if you allow Him to. You need to quit letting your flesh get in the way, because that is what's keeping us from actually exceeding in life and exceeding in that life that God has called us to have, to be able to grow in Him and to be able to be that example and to be that light in the darkness that people run to when they need help. But we sit back and, we just continue to try to fill our voids in our lives with things that don't matter. Whether, we can idolize money. Is that what you're passionate about? Is that all you run after every day? Is trying to find out how I can make more money, this and that? Or are you focusing on God and doing everything you can to make money? Knowing that money is just a thing to help you survive, and you focus on God. Don't be lazy. That's another whole thing to talk about.
We might have time, though, because we're getting through this pretty quick.
But so how do we do that? And it's talking about like worship. So, we know not to worship money, relationships, not to worship our children. I know a lot of parents I've seen do that. They'll worship them and just throw a bunch of gifts at them, and it never seems like their kids could ever do wrong. There's a lot of those things that go on that we end up seem to even be worshiping that. But in John 4:23 says, "But the hour is coming and is now here, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such people to worship Him." To worship in truth. You can sit there and walk around, in all these golden robes and looking so big and fancy and everything can be perfect, but to truly worship in truth with God is to be real. Be real with yourself. Realize that you are not perfect. I'm not perfect. No one is perfect. But to constantly walk around like you are perfect? Are you truly worshiping God in truth? Or are you worshiping God in a lie? And then Revelations 21:8, and all liars are endangered of the fiery pits of hell.
It's not funny. He just says that all the time.
It's true. So are you worshiping God in the fullness and truth of just laying everything out and saying, God, this is who I am. This is where I've messed up. I am still having those problems. I'm still living foolishly. I'm disobedient. I'm deceived. I'm enslaved to all kinds of passions and pleasures. Help me take my passions, my pleasures, and everything and focus them on you. Allow that to become our passion in our lives, that we continue to passionately seek God. And when we passionately seek God, God will continue to, like the scripture says, that He will go before us and level the mountains and break through the iron gates. Your relationships will become stronger when you truly are passionate for God and not for the other one. What's so funny?
Nothing. It's so true. It resonates so true. And when you're not just in your relationships.
I did go high on that, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
My voice went up.
Yeah. It's like you were getting defensive. Every time he gets defensive, all of a sudden his voice goes a little bit higher and he gets so excited. But no, like we were talking about walking in truth. The other thing about idolizing things is, when you meet somebody and you fall in infatuation, because everybody says you fall in love, but really you're just really infatuated. And a lot of time, very easily, that turns into an idol situation. But you don't see the things that are happening, the bad things that are going on. You don't see that
love is blind.
Love is blind. I mean, to begin with, when you're
so passionate.
Love isn't really blind, but that's what everyone says, is that love is blind.
It's really, but passion is blind, I think.
Infatuation is blind.
Yeah.
But when you're infatuated with something, when you're infatuated with money, you're not seeing that you running after the dollar is making it where your wife is sitting at home alone every single night and you're not giving her any attention. Or when you're passionate about the dollar, you're not seeing that your kids are constantly asking for your attention and you're not giving them any. When you're passionate or when you're infatuated with anything, and it's just another word for calling it an idol, but I think people understand it a little bit better. When you're infatuated with things, you don't see the truth. You don't see, your infatuation kind of skews the lines of truth and falsehood, and you look through it and you don't see the truth. And relationships do not grow if there's not truth in it. And it's one of the reasons that people, they become infatuated with someone and they rush into getting married, and all of a sudden all these truths come out and they can't handle it because they didn't see the truth to begin with. Or a parent thinking that their kids are not doing any wrong because honestly they're infatuated with the idea that me being a good parent means my children do nothing wrong. Your children mess up. I mean, I hate it, but my daughter messes up a lot. My son does. And it's where I go in, I strip away my feelings about it, and I see the truth. And I say, you know what, Lord, please, God, break down my pride. Let me understand that I will be a better parent if I face this issue head on than covering it up and thinking, okay, if I cover it up, it'll look like I'm a good parent because it looks like they did nothing wrong. Where in reality, it's just not the case. Or let me cover up the fact that my spouse is doing this stuff and not really walk in truth. And then years go by and then all of a sudden my eyes are opened, and it's happened in our marriage. I get, so infatuated with you at different times that I get where I don't see the truth. I let things, little habits that are coming up in you go on and on and on. And then one day I just wake up and I'm a little hormonal and a little ill with you. And then all of a sudden it blows up. But it's because during that time I wasn't really seeing truth. I was just seeing my infatuation with you and letting the other things slide.
Yeah.
Because I felt like that was love. But that's not love. Love is walking in truth. And that's and that's what the Lord, a lot of people are like, man, the Lord's so hard on people. In the Bible, there's all these rules, all these things, but really, God just is walking in truth. And knowing that you're a sinful person and you've got sinful natures, you can't fix anything unless you know the truth about it. It's impossible. You cannot fix it if you don't know the truth. And so God speaks that truth into us. He tells us, you know what? This is what you were. You need to know. JD said it this morning, and it actually broke my heart just remembering how much God's been able to work in me, because I remember being so awful, and I've seen, I can see the depths, how deep my sin went and how deep it still goes a lot of the time, and how amazing it is that God chose to. I asked for that gift of salvation. And I asked for the gift that Jesus gave to take my place, to pay for my sin. And it's amazing to me. And it meant so much to me this morning. I was bawling my poor eyes out this morning, just because God wants us to understand the truth. Because when we do, we understand what need we're in.
Yeah.
In all things.
It is. And it's really just laying everything out on the table. You don't have to do it with other people. In relationships, I think it's very good to lay it out on the table, to lay everything out on the table and open things up. But it's so much more than that. But really, and it all comes down to God, and we have to fully trust in Him. Romans 8:37 through 39. No, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. We're conquerors. Meaning that we can conquer by accepting Christ. We have conquered all of those negative things in our lives. We can overcome those, but we have to do it through Him. If we're not doing it through Him and we think we can do it at the works of our own hands, we're foolish. Because we're going to do it with passion and do it with other things and fulfill those things, those voids, with things of the world. And we're not becoming the conquerors because we're not allowing him to dwell in us. Who loves us even when we're sinning? In verse 38, it then goes on and says, "For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angel nor demon, neither the present nor the future, or any powers, neither height nor depth, or anything else, all creation, will be able to separate us from the love of God that is Christ Jesus our Lord." Nothing will separate us from his love. The big thing is we have to be the one to accept it. We have to accept his love. A lot of people will look at that and says, nothing can separate us from the love of God. There's a portion of that we have to accept it. If we're not accepting God's life or love, we're not living in God, or God's not living in us. We want God to mold into this little box that we kind of sit in, saying, okay, God, this is my life, and I want you to come and be a part of it in these areas only. I still want to keep this, and this. That's not what that means. To worship in truth is to let down all those edges of the box, open completely up, and say, okay, God, everywhere I'm at, work, school, family, spouses, relationships, money, whatever it is, it's yours. I'm done. I'm going to continue to follow you, do what you tell me to do, and I'm going to continue to walk in your light and walk in your love.
Where was it? When we were reading this morning in Titus, where's the rest of that verse?
Before 3?
Yeah. No, after 3. 3:3, but what was after 3:3? Because there was a key verse that JD brought up this morning that just, I don't know. I'm sorry, I should have looked it up before I brought it up.
We ought to sing for everyone since there's a little bit of a downtime right this second.
We can't do Jeopardy because that would be infringing on Titus 3. Okay, so that's that. So it says, at the beginning we said, at one time we too were foolish, disobedient, deceived, and enslaved by all kinds of passions and pleasures. We lived in malice and envy, being hated and hating one another. But when the kindness and love of God our Savior appeared, he saved us, not because of righteous things we had done, but because of his mercy. He saved us through the washing of rebirth and renewal of the Holy Spirit, whom he poured out for us generously through Jesus Christ our Savior. And so the one thing that JD pointed out this morning that just, I've heard it so many times in my walk with Christ, but it resonated with me again, is he says, all these things that we did wrong, we were foolish, disobedient, we hated being hated, but, so usually my mom and dad used to say, because I would, give them excuses for everything, and I would say, oh yeah, well I know I was supposed to do this, but I did this. My mom would always say, well, when you say but, it's like forgetting everything that was before that. So it's like saying, okay, all this stuff is true, but forget everything I just said. This is what's truth. But when the kindness and love of God, our Savior, appeared, not when, and JD said it this morning, not when we do our best and, we go in and we do everything we can and then we let God come in and kind of do the rest. But when God does it alone, when he in his mercy comes through and shows us the kindness that we don't deserve and the love of him that we don't deserve and saves us, he's the one that does that. We can't do anything. And it resonated with me. I mean, like I said, in my Christian walk, I've been saved 14 years. And in my Christian, I know because a girl in our cul-de-sac was born the day I was saved. So I always look at her, but 14 years I've been saved, and I've heard that over and over again, but it resounded in me again this morning. It made me it broke my heart all over again that it was nothing that I did.
That's right. It says not because of the righteous things we have done, but it's because of his mercy. It's not because you lead worship at a church. It's not because you go feed the homeless. It's not because you go and do all these great things. It's not because you went to the front altar, you raised your hand and said a prayer. It has nothing to do with any of those things that's truly saved you.
No, you asked, all you did was ask for the gift that was readily there for you.
And you received it. That's the number one thing, receiving God's love. A lot of us, we don't receive it, so we never truly live with the love of God dwelling in us. That same power that created us perfect can now renew us and renew our mind. And we've talked about that before in the past, the things that can help us renew our minds so that we can continue to act and be more Christ-like. It's a constant, until the day we die, it's going to be nothing but a renewing until, God takes our spirit and we're...
David had to pray every night, Lord, search my heart, make me more like you. Look at things that I don't even know are there, God, and help them. Help me get rid of those sinful natures that I have. And it's something we're going to do until we die. It's something we're going to do until we are made whole with Jesus.
Exactly.
And it just meant so much to me because, I was an atheist. You and I have talked about it, but I was an atheist before I got saved. Honestly, my mom used to get so mad at me. She was raised with a Baptist preacher for a granddad, and she would get so mad at me and my dad because we would go around and we would say, the Bible's a book of stories that are like telephone. It started with Jonah catching a big fish, and then at the end, it was Jonah was eaten by a whale. Everybody has those stories, but that's what I honestly believed. And to be honest, my parents, we started going to church when I was a teenager. I was 15, and we started going to church, and I was in the youth group for several months before I got saved. I actually didn't even get saved at my church. I got saved in Waffle House with a pastor that I was sitting there waiting for my dad to get off work, and a pastor came over, and for some reason, I felt like I was too smart to be a Christian. To be honest with you, I did. I looked at Christianity and I thought, you know what? They're just a bunch of bumpkins that look at, they use faith as an excuse to not educate themselves. I just did not have any respect for Christians. Any Christian that I had come across in my life could never give me a reason of why they chose to love the Lord. And you know what? It's really sad. I wish I would have recorded that conversation somehow, but somehow in that moment, and I don't know if it was a mix of things he was saying to me and just the Holy Spirit knocking on my heart, but I accepted the Lord. And one thing that always comes into my life is I've got a lot of people, and I haven't reached them all, and I do what I feel like the Lord calls us to do, which is just love them. If we talk about it, I'll talk about it, but I think one thing they don't understand is that there's nothing that they can do. There's no education they can get, and I didn't understand it either. There's no education that I could get. There was no, work that I could do to make my way to heaven.
Correct.
That's hard. I think that's hard for humans. I don't think they really understand that it's a gift, because even when Christians do get saved, they think that they're making their, I believe in works. The Bible is very evident of the fruit of your life and things that we should do in the name of the Lord. But he's also very clear that works don't bring us to heaven. And I think that people are so used to to-do list, and they're so used to being able to check things off and say, okay, check, I fed the homeless, and check, I did this, and I did, I've come up on the scale of Christians. We know Christians like that. And I honestly, I feel like it's confession hour, but I've had times in my life where I'm like that, where I feel like, okay, I'm going to church and I'm leading worship and I'm doing the middle school girl ministry and I'm leading drama, and I think, oh man, I'm such a good Christian. But then when I think that, I honestly look out at other people, and when I think that, it makes me look at other people and think, oh, I'm better than they are. Look at all this stuff I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that. It's just a gift. And
that's Romans 5:8 right there. But God demonstrated his love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. I know you say that a lot.
Yeah. While we were yet sinners, he was on the cross. We were crucifying him, nailing him to a cross, and he was still dying for us.
Yep.
I love that. That's like my favorite thing. No, I don't love it because, it's sad.
But you love that part of
I love
his
it.
love.
It's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing that we're literally, because I could not imagine doing things bad and messing up, and that person I'm doing that stuff to still loving me enough to die for me while I'm doing it. It breaks my heart. I can't imagine it. I can't imagine. I mean, I can imagine that kind of love, but it breaks my heart because I can't imagine me demonstrating that kind of love.
Yeah. It's tough. We talk about Christ living in us, right? I mean, we can go on with that. And first of all, if anyone's out there listening, they want to chime in, they're more than welcome to. We probably should have done this in the beginning of the show. The phone number is, you're welcome to give us a call, 620-717-4119. That's 620-717-4119. And right now, what I want every single person to do is pull out their phone, tablet, go to a new web page. Keep this web page up because you still need to listen to us. Go to Facebook or Twitter, log into your accounts, go to Wagz Film, WAGZFILM, like us, friend us, all those types of good things. If you've got any questions or anything, you can hit us up there too while we're on the air, and we'll be more than happy to answer those questions. The phone number again is 620-717-4119, and we are Wagz Film. Going back to what you were saying about Christ still dying for us, and I'm going to speak something to some men out there, especially husbands. That's really been something that's been on my heart a lot lately. Looking at the scriptures where the Bible tells us to love our wives like Christ loved the church, and what that truly means. I mean, we talk about, and every guy would say, yeah, I'd die for my wife, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more than that. Like my wife was talking about how Christ died for us while we were still sinners and while we were yet sinners. It's about loving our wives and our spouses through the mess. And when they are the least lovable is the time that we need to be loving them the most. And that no matter what they're doing, we need to be showing and shedding that love on them, but not holding it against them. I'm guilty of it myself. I've been there where, things happen and 6, 7 months, years later, you bring it back up. And that's what's great about God is that even when we mess up, He never brings our past up against us.
It's the devil that does that.
It's the devil that does that, and it's normally ourselves. And us as men, we are supposed to be like Christ. And as patient as Christ is with you and your dirty mess, is the same type of patience that we need to have with our wives. It's the same type of love that we need to have with our wives. To love them through things. Not judge them through their faults, but to love them through it. That's what our job is as husbands. Now I'm going to get off that little topic right there. I just had to get that off my chest. We might have a whole show on that eventually down the road, but it's true. We just got to be patient and loving with one another. And I know I've failed in those areas, and I do try.
And not idolizing your wives.
Yes.
Bringing it all the way back.
Yes.
Is when you love them through their mess, is when you're not idolizing them.
Yes, and that's one good way to show that you're not idolizing the relationship, is because even when they're doing wrong, you're still loving them, and you're actually loving them more through that. You're showing them more love through that. That's how you show you're not idolizing it.
Because if you were idolizing it, then all of a sudden, this person that you idolized and put on a pedestal, they're going to fall, and they're going to fall hard, and all of a sudden, you're going to demonize them.
And you will find them as being wicked and threatening. And all of a sudden, you're going to look at your spouse and say, ooh, they're threatening. They're going to take my kids away from us. Or they're going to take the house. Or they're going to take the money or the car. Or they're taking this from me. And all of a sudden, you play this blame game, and it all becomes that other person's fault. Because now all of a sudden, you're looking at them as demonized, or as the actual definition says, as portrayed as wicked and threatening. You're looking at them as wicked, instead of looking at them through Christ's eyes, which is through loving, and can see the goodness in them, even through their faults. Even if they were crucifying you on a cross, you're still loving them through that. That is not easy. But that's what we need to be striving to be. If the coworker that we're dealing with at work is continuing to, belittle us and calling us names, and we find them to be threatening, that's the time we're supposed to be loving them as friends. That's how we show Christ to the world, is when people don't deserve love, we love them even more. And it needs to start in our homes. If we can't do it with our wives and we can't do it with our children, how can you expect us to do it with other people in this world?
And that's how true relationships are made.
It is.
I mean, you think about it. You don't think, I don't think that I idolize my friends. You don't think that. But you kind of do in some ways, especially when they mess up and all of a sudden you're like, you know what, we're not going to be friends anymore. I know people that do that. I know people that you mess up, man, you're not on their good side anymore. And that's not good, because all of a sudden it's either black or white for them. They're either great or they're not. They either idolize you, or they're infatuated with the friendship, or you do one thing wrong, or you do some things wrong, and all of a sudden they demonize the relationship. All of a sudden it was like, oh, none of that was true, or now it makes me question everything about you. But they forget that they got to bring it back down. Everybody's human. People mess up. People defend themselves when they have no defense, and people make up things. I mean, it's just, they're evil. They make mistakes, and you got to see them for what they are and through Christ's eyes, and know that, even Christians, I mean, I am the world's worst for idolizing Christians. I am. I really do.
And I feel like I judge, and I'm faulty of it too, because I feel like I judge Christians.
I put Christians on a pedestal. And honestly, I demonize Christians. And it's something that I need to ask forgiveness for. And it's really actually just getting to me now. Because I really do. I mean, anybody who knows me knows that I tell people, I'm a Christian, but I don't like Christians. That's like my famous saying. That's what I say. In honesty, I don't like a lot of things that Christians do, but I forget that, you know what, I'm lucky. I've accepted the love of Christ, and I've accepted the power that Christ gives us to be able to renew our minds. And there are a lot of Christians that accepted the love of Christ, but they did not accept the power that it gives them. They use excuses to say, oh, well, I'm a sinner saved by grace. It's the favorite one. But if you're one of those Christians listening right now, I want to tell you that I love you. I want to ask for your forgiveness in saying that I love Christian. I'm a Christian, but I hate Christians. I don't. And right now, I just want to ask for your forgiveness. And I want you to know that if you didn't know about it, I'm telling you right now, it's like a line of power that you've never known. And if you didn't know it was there, it wasn't something that you could tap into. If you accepted the love of Christ, there is a renewing spirit that's there for you to help you renew your mind, bring you back to those positive thoughts that we talked about 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was a little bit longer ago. The last time I was on, we talked about those positive thoughts. But if you don't know how to do that, if you don't know, then you're not going to be able to implement those behaviors. If you don't know about them, you are more than welcome to find me on Facebook or Wagz Film. I'm Kristyl Kent Wagner on Facebook, Wagz Film. You can email us on there if it's something that you want to learn more about, because I think that it's such a key element in becoming the relational Christians that we're supposed to be, is being able to renew our mind. It's classic behavior replacement therapy, where you're so used to doing these things. You're so used to, I'm going to get ugly for a second. You're so used to judging the people that are doing immoral acts. I mean, how many times do you see Christians that are downing gay people?
Exactly.
I mean, I'm getting ugly, but at the same time, if you don't know another behavior, if you don't know another way to combat that, another way to react, but if you don't know another way to be able to love those people, anybody that does wrong to you in your life, if you don't know how to deal with the people that are, making up stories about you, and you just say, oh, well, I'm going to cut them out of my life. If you don't know another way, you're always going to go back to what you know.
Exactly.
And you know what? Anybody that's, a Christian like me that looks at Christians, say I don't like Christianity, when I see the churches going out picketing, funerals because of all the gay rights stuff, it's wrong. And you cannot like me for that, but it's wrong for them to do that. All it does is stir up hate for Christians. It doesn't stir up unity. And Jesus was about loving people. And in that, there's no love there. There's nothing that's showing the love of Christ. But if you don't know any different, if you don't know how to react different, you can still feel a certain way, because we all are going to feel differently. You can feel a certain way, but if you don't know how to channel that correctly, please either talk to your pastor. If you don't think you can get it from him, you can, like I said, you can email us, Wagz Film on Facebook, or me, I'm Kristyl Kent Wagner on Facebook, or even Bobby, well, I call him Bobby, Robert Wagner on Facebook. But no, I do. I have to ask for your forgiveness, because I put Christians up on a pedestal that they continuously fall on, and they're humans. And we don't all have the same knowledge base, and I think that's why, relationships are so important. It's so important for us to talk to each other and relate with each other and learn from each other. I learned stuff. We've got girls in our neighborhood, and I love them to death, and I learn something from them every day. Every single day that I'm with them, I learn from them. They're middle school girls. And a lot of the time I try, I think to myself, oh, I'm going to sew into them. Or, we had a friend that moved in with us lately, and, I think a lot, I'm going to sew into her life. But you know what? She sews into my life a lot. And she speaks into my life a lot. And that's what we're here for. We're here to build relationships, and we're here to, dig into the Word together and love Jesus and love people and truly love them and take them off their pedestals. Quit looking at people and saying, you know what, they're just stupid people, or they make stupid decisions, and take them off their pedestals. Because when you demonize somebody, it means that you idolize them at one time. And even mankind, people look and they say, oh, I hate people. And I'm guilty of it too. I hate people. Well, guess what? People are flawed, and it's sad. And we were once flawed, and we need to change our view on people and look at them and say, you know what? They're flawed. I'm flawed. I'm flawed right there with you. I just happen to have a channel into a renewing energy that can help us. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox for a second.
You're fine. So I just posted on Facebook today that, what are some things that can take your eyes off of God? What are some of those things that you could idolize? You can call in, you can put us on Facebook. I'd like to know some things. We've talked about, money and relationships, and, it could be cars, it could be materialistic things. But what are some of those things, just your posts or your call-ins, 620-717-4119, could help others that may be actually dealing with some of those same things. Tell us what you're dealing with. Tell us what some of the things that you may have idolized and how that affected your life and your relationships. And when we put those things up on the pedestal, because it's not if it will fall, but it's when it's going to fall, it destroys you, and it destroys your heart. It destroys the way that you will actually love others, and you will actually show Christ, is because you're now all of a sudden you're hurting that love. But we can do it, and it's because we need to stop living. In Galatians 2:20,
I'm sorry.
Galatians 2:20 says, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. It's about dying to ourselves, renewing ourselves with God, and allowing Christ to live in us. It's about Christ in us, not us in Christ. It's that simple, people. I know it seems like it could be complicated, but it's a constant thing. It's something. It's so easy when you get caught up in the world, and extremely complicated when I'm dealing with my kids. Because when I got kids bickering and yelling and screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, Mommy, Mommy," this and that, and then all of a sudden you're not thinking anything. It's so easy to take your mind off of when you're in the world with the worldly things that are going on around you, and you're constantly being attacked and pulled in so many different directions. But it's all part of training. It's all training the mind and training your heart, and allowing Christ to live in you. And even during those hard times, you're allowing Christ to still resonate through you. It's something that we will mess up, and we'll constantly mess up. It's not like, that's the one thing that I think a lot of us I don't like about a lot of Christian films and things like this is it makes it look like, we talked about living the abundant life with Christ, and we had the discussion at the house that, with my wife that, that term abundant just kind of makes it sound like, all of a sudden you become a Christian and life's supposed to be perfect. It's not about life being perfect as far as all of a sudden you have money and cars and all these other things, these riches.
And your relationships are good. It's a work.
I think the abundant life is being able to live at peace and knowing that you have someone to go to that can help take control of those things. That's having that abundant life, is having Christ there to help you through all this. And when the struggles come, you praying and you're allowing Christ to help you tackle those mountains and tackle those things and fight the waves. You've got someone there to help you.
And I am going to correct you.
What did I do?
Christ doesn't help us do any of that stuff. Christ goes before us. We have to allow Christ to go before us. We can't do...
Well, that's still him helping us.
Yeah, but we can't do every single thing that we can do and then say, all right, Christ, come on in and help.
No, I agree.
We need to go alongside him.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying...
I just wanted to argue with you for a second. Because
I know you like to argue.
No, I just needed to because I just was talking earlier about how I just, in fact, I'm infatuated with you. So I needed to bring you down a couple steps.
Bring me down a couple steps? It's fine. We'll make up later.
Oh, no.
Anyways. Well, I think we've got enough to talk about. And you and I have to go. Give me next week. Come on back and hear us at 4 o'clock. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Again, hit us up Facebook, Twitter, Wagz Film. And until next week, we will be constantly renewing your mind. Stay focused on Christ. Fill yourself up in your heart and just constantly be loving others and allow Christ to shine through you and work through you. It's not about what you can do for Christ, but what you allow Christ to do through you. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you later.
Bye.